Okay, we are live.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the City Policy Committee meeting of November 17th. I'm calling the meeting to order at 4 p.m. Madam Clerk, please go ahead and read meeting procedures.
Thank you. Assembly Bill 361 suspends certain provisions of the Brown Act, allowing public meetings like this one to be held by teleconference to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. At this time, I will conduct roll call, and I'd ask the chair to recognize me afterwards to confirm certain matters for the record. Chair Veros.
Here.
Vice Chair Armstrong.
Here.
Thank you. Based on the responses to roll call, the record should reflect that all committee members can hear the proceedings clearly. If there are no objections, the record will also reflect that each committee member believes, based on voice or facial recognition or otherwise, that all persons representing themselves as committee members are in fact committee members. Thank you. Seeing no objection, I will turn the meeting back over to the chair with a reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Thank you. Item number 2, public comment or written communication. At this time, members of public are encouraged to address the policy committee on any item not already included in tonight's agenda. Members of the public who are participating via Zoom will have the opportunity to make comments to the policy committee live through the Zoom application. Comments should not exceed 3 minutes. No committee action can be taken at this meeting on issues raised during public comment, whether submitted by email or Zoom. To comment, please click the raise your hand button or *9 on your telephone to request to speak. When it is your turn, you will be unmuted to make your comment for up to 3 minutes. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Written comments submitted were provided to the committee prior to the start of this meeting and made a part of the public record. Written public comment will no longer be read aloud during the meeting. Public comment is now open. Madam Clerk, any public comment, please?
At this time, I have no request for public comment.
Thank you. Then we go ahead and close the public comment. Next item 3, unfinished business. Item 3.1, request for comments and direction on a proposed alarm ordinance update presented by Assistant City Attorney Alicia Poole.
Thank you, Chair Veros, and good afternoon to both you and Vice Chair Armstrong today. I'm going to try to make this really brief because everything's written in the staff report, but we're looking for some discussion and comments on the proposed alarm ordinance update. The main purpose of the alarm update is there is habitual false alarms that have been unnecessarily occupying a significant amount of SRPD or San Ramon Police Department resources. And through working with PD staff and looking at the alarm ordinance as currently written, it's outdated and it had not been updated since 1985. So with that, we seek to propose and accomplish a comprehensive update on the alarm ordinance. We're looking to create reasonable standards for alarm system users so they understand their role and their responsibilities. We will recognize that habitual false alarms place a lot of or causes significant burdens on our police department, and that we should have these requirements and restrictions, including the threat of civil penalties if we have habitual false alarms from particular users. So I listed a bunch of notable changes between the current ordinance and what is being proposed. Of note, There's an updated list of definitions. This is also a significant change that all alarm users in the city will need to register and obtain alarm permit. The permit will be free to register, so there shouldn't be a concern about that. There will be annual renewal required, and as of January 1st of each year. A permit year is going to be a calendar year, and that just clarity that if people have separate alarm systems, such as like an ADU in the property, and the main residence has a alarm system, that each of them should have their own registration for each of those locations or different distinct addresses or tenants. And we also clarify the duties of the alarm user, the alarm installer, and the monitoring agencies. We outline civil penalties, which are different than the current ones stated in the fee resolution. And there's a clearly defined appeal process for anybody contesting any civil penalties. We clearly added a confidentiality of information and records, so it won't be public record or considered public record, whatever people input into these registration forms. And there's a governmental immunity disclaimer added. We will be using, and PD staff is present to discuss this, but they will be using a contractor to administer the registration, and I guess noting how many habitual false alarms there are, and if someone needs to be to incur civil penalties. So you can ask them more about that if you're interested. And we look forward to your comments, and if you're generally supportive, we'll be bringing this hopefully to introduction at the next council meeting, November 23rd. So with that, I'm here to take questions about the ordinance itself, or staff's here also if you're interested in statistics or just wondering how the police is going to run the registration, and how many false alarms and so forth. So with that, I'll turn it back to you for questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Vice Chair Armstrong, any questions, please?
Well, I've got a couple questions. I kind of like the idea of this policy here. I can kind of understand a predicament that the police are in here. You got to balance the false alarms with the real alarms. And so I see it as a public safety issue. We certainly don't want our police to be responding and diverting over to false alarms when it might put them out of position for real crime going on in the city. At the same time, I think we want people to feel safe that their alarms are going to be responded to. And I think there is a owner and a user responsibility to make this system work. So I kind of like what you're doing here. I don't really have a scope in my mind, a feel for how many alarms we have out there within the city, or maybe the number of false alarms that we get each year, unless that was in the staff report and I just missed it. But all that aside, obviously there's a need, or we wouldn't be here talking about it. The question I've got, maybe a couple questions. One's more of a technical question, and that is in the definitions, it talks about the permit year being January through December. And when, as I recall, kind of going through the whole budgeting process and everything else, we approved a fee and a permitting schedule that kind of runs through the fiscal year, July through June. Why aren't we going to align with that permit schedule and do something different for a permit year? It might be a part of the way the city operates that I'm not familiar with, but that's my first question.
I can have staff maybe elaborate, but my understanding is they felt out of ease to get, some people say they moved to San Ramon and they register in the middle of the year, but to get everybody on the same track of having a permit year otherwise they'd be constantly processing registrations and renewals throughout the year, depending on when someone registered. So they wanted to align everybody on the same time frame. And additionally, there's no registration fee, so there's no fee stated out in the fee resolution. The only thing is that as far as how many false alarms you incur during a year, it's my understanding is there's no intent to change it. It's actually, I think you get your first one free essentially, and then it's through number 2 and number 3 in a permit year that you start incurring fines. And onward, clearly 3 and up, it increases. But the first one is 3, and I think, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's going to be more education and working with people. If initially, if they have number 2 was an accident or whatever, I guess they have some businesses where I don't know why they have faulty doors or something, and it continually triggers alarms.
Yeah, well, I get the penalties for the habitual false alarms and that sort of thing. But what you said there kind of, I guess, is important then to me, in that you said there is no fee, the permit fee to just get your permit and do your renewal. Is that correct?
That's correct. Right? Clavette, sorry, you may elaborate on that one.
All right. I don't know why I just assumed that there was a fee, and that's why I was thinking to more align it with our fee schedule, but it may not matter at that if there's no fee. The next question, I guess, has to do with, again, I got tripped up a little bit on some of the definitions and terms in there in terms of owner and user, and it's all in there. But then I started thinking about, what about those people who are renters? And are they users or are they designees? And is there something in here, or does there need to be something in here a little more specific with respect to the responsibility of an owner to ensure that whoever's occupying the house, if they're a renter or something, has accountability for properly operating that alarm system? Say the owner's, lives in North Carolina and then rents his house, his or her house out.
Right.
What's the accountability for the owner to keep the renters, doing what they need to be doing when they're occupying that house and using that alarm system? Does that make sense?
Yeah, the alarm user definition, we try to write it as broadly as possible. So it means any person, corporation. So if somebody set up a trust or an LLC to own their ADU or something, that would still be covered. It's broadly described as a person, corporation, partnership, proprietorship, governmental or educational entity, or any other entity owning, leasing, or operating an alarm system. Or on whose premises an alarm system is maintained for the protection of such premises. We did touch upon the requirement for tenants or distinct addresses, or the tenant, even if you don't have a distinct address, because I think some maybe ADU properties don't have distinct addresses, and they all comes to like maybe the primary address. But the fact that if you have a tenant, they will be responsible to have that registered. Tenants can, ultimately the property owner, if there's penalties, is going to be the one faced with the penalty. So it'll be something that they would have to work out with their tenant, I guess, in their lease, to make sure that their tenant is operating their alarm system responsibly.
Okay, and just to be clear, whose responsibility is it to actually go down and get the permit or to do the annual renewal? Is that the tenant who's living there, or is it the owner who's got the paper on the location?
It depends. So someone can contractually make their tenant, I guess, be responsible, but ultimately, the buck stops with the property owner, because they will be the one faced with the the fines, levied if they don't end up paying. It's kind of like code enforcement type of, citations, or tickets, I guess you want to call it. It's like a ticket almost. So, who can you really attach it to? I mean, you can cite the tenant, but I mean, ultimately it's the property that ends up incurring the penalty. So, ultimately it will be the property owner if they have multiple home, or I guess premise, like a ADU and their own primary residence on the same property. But again, I won't get into it too much, but you could contractually make your tenant be responsible for those things. But that's between the homeowner and the tenant. So ultimately, property owner is going to have to encourage their tenant to do so.
Okay. Yeah, I've got no more questions. Thank you, Alicia.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Alicia, thanks for presentation, sharing the information. Definitely, alarm system is considered as one of the most good feeling within the community about their safety. So definitely, this is a very important aspect within the community. So I have a few questions regarding this. So how are we planning to communicate and educating about this new policy? Do we go to the alarm installation monitoring agency, or are we going to the homeowners? How we are going to do that?
I think I'm going to pass this question to our staff, the police staff, because they're going to be focused on the implementation. I'm focused more on the ordinance writing part. So,
Okay.
thanks. Lovette?
Yes.
Do you guys have a plan as to how you're going to do outreach to the community as to requiring the registration and eventually renewals of
Yes. We, APS is the alarm agency, alarm program systems, and they have pamphlets that we're going to give handouts. I also had planned to have them handed out to the new businesses that come into San Ramon as well. And also we're going to put it on our webpage. All the information on our webpage directly. So because they can register online as well as read the new information.
Okay. So I do see like multiple alarm companies, like Bay Alarm. What is that? There are multiple alarm companies. So are we going to communicate with all of them, or is there any one single entity that we can communicate through them to all these channels?
Got it. The actual owners are in the audience. If we can, Alicia, can we have them respond to how they do that?
Yeah, I think it's Jim Hutchinson and maybe Brett. I think Brett Glass is also the other.
Jim is in the audience.
But I think also to maybe add on, just knowing that we have city newsletters that we've done educational informational articles about new ordinances. I know we've done ones, I think, on like the smoking ordinance, in newsletter. So I think that's a possibility to lead up to before we start implementing it. And I know, I think because the registration is new, I know police, of course, are going to be very forgiving for the first year as to, getting people on board and getting everyone registered. So I think it's going to be a process of education for probably at least into the next year, and getting then the word out and in different ways.
I think that helps definitely. And do we have option of online registration?
I think how it's mainly going to be, unless someone insists on coming in to fill out a form.
Okay.
Hey,
And,
hey, Alicia, Clavette. Sorry, this is Jim Hutchinson. I was just going to add, it's a fantastic question. And just so you guys know, so we're going to provide content to the PD to put up on the PD website, also social media channels like Nextdoor, Twitter, the Facebook account. And that'll all be in concert with the information that's on our website, which will be a San Ramon PD website for alarm users to register. And then we will communicate to all the alarm companies. So we'll go out to ADT, Bay Alarm, Simply Safe, Ring, all of them and let them know about the ordinance, that we're the new administrators, all the specifics about it. And so that communication to them, we will also directly communicate to the alarm owners when we send them out notices. And the alarm companies will take some responsibility as well to communicate everything, so they'll be well aware of the ordinance, the specifics, and that what the administration is. So it's kind of a whole bunch of different pieces.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
So when we give, like, I see that initially we are going to give warnings, right? So when we are giving warnings, we are going, I'm sure you might have already covered it, but just to make sure. So we are going to provide what is going to be the monetary penalties once if they start exceeding the number of penalties, right? So we are going to share that information via some pamphlets or something, like a flyer or something, so that folks who got that warning knows that they are next time they are going to end up paying for that, right? So we are going to share that information, right?
That fee schedule will be on everything. Yep, you got it.
Right. The first alarm, false alarm, would be a written warning, so no charge or penalty assessed. It's at false alarm number 2. You'd get a written notice, and it's a 50. The proposed, they as you may know, this will the penalties will need to go to the finance committee and be put on the fee resolution, because it's different than what's currently there. But so on a separate check, the finance committee and a fee resolution will be updated to have this new schedule of penalties. But what's proposed, as you've seen in the ordinance, is nothing for the first false alarms. For the second false alarm would be $50, and the third it's a written notice and $150 fine, and then false alarm number 4 and above would be written notice with $300 fine. So those would be assessed. It's how many you do in a permit year. And currently right now it's how many false alarms in a 90-day period. So constantly it's reset every 90 days. So people could currently have many false alarms throughout a year.
Okay, 90 days. Okay.
Yeah.
And what happens if they don't pay penalty?
Well, we end up, this is a penalty that, there's a different ways you can do this, but, we have finance send letters. It can be sent to a collector. There's different ways of doing it, but generally right now, I think the method is people are sent to collections if they do not pay their penalties. They can appeal them, so we have appeal process.
And appeal also can be done by online?
I think we've had ones where people have submitted appeals online. I think we'll have to make sure that the appeal form is available to be submitted. But I think a lot of times people submit it and then we go from there. It's the same or similar process to appealing other violations of the municipal code.
Sounds good. Okay. Thank you. With that, I'll open public comment. So public comment is open now. Madam Clerk, anyone from public comment?
Yes, we do have a request for public comment.
Yes, this is Susie Ferris at Endercom. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Sidhar. A quick question. The gentleman, Jim Hutchinson, that was just speaking, is he a staff member that's working on this?
He'll be the contractor that police is using to administer the program.
Okay, well, he touched on a couple things that I wanted to point out, and I am in the process of writing this up. I just had a lot of other things today going on that I didn't get a chance to complete it, but I will send it in. I did some quick checking because we've lived in this house for 37 years, and we've had an ADT alarm system for that length of time. So I called and spoke to them about this. And they have a pretty good process because, of course, they're located across the United States and they have a lot of business. But I also did a quick query out on the internet, and there are a number of systems such as Cove, Simply Safe, Ring, a whole bunch of them that don't require contracts. So when you get into your page 10, B738 through B739, I think you really need to go in and look at what you're asking for in there. Also, I wanted to make the comment that I believe that you need to note on this that home alarm systems benefit the San Ramon Police Department because many of these systems, such as ours, are already registered with the police department because we have video monitoring and they have a record of that. So they can reach out to us in the event that there's a crime, an accident, something in our area. And I really think you need to bear that in mind and maybe really ask what the whole point of this and what problem it is you're trying to fix. Because as I was going through this, and again, like I said, I'm going to write this up. One, there must be a specific audience that you're trying to get to. And that kind of concerns me on these things. Some of your points that you get into later on page 9B7 through 37, you're almost getting into the point where I think you almost are going to need a Miranda rights type of warning based on your bullet points. You're asking me to train or monitor my backup contacts so that they behave a certain way, that they respond a certain way in a certain time frame. I won't be able to get anybody to do that anymore. Right now I've got 2 or 3, but your requirements for that are pretty heavy. And then you're putting the burden on a homeowner if they sell the house to ensure that the new owner goes in and registers. I think that's a little unusual. And you definitely have not really considered the difference between a new system and an existing system. You have certain timeframes, 15 days they have to register. That applies to a new system, not an existing system. And I would just second, I believe it was Sidhar, I think it was you, it might have been Mark. The difference between renters and owners, I think that's a really key thing too, because if it's a owner that's out of state or something like that, some of the responsibilities you're putting on them in terms of understanding and complying with your ordinance is pretty strict. I'm just looking at my notes here really quick.
So, Susan, typically we give 3 minutes, but do you still have any more comments?
Yes, I do. I have one more. The other thing that I really wanted to point out, and it may be more for Mr. Hutchinson, I really think you need to craft out a better comparison between wireline systems, wireless systems, and hybrid systems. And the example that I would give you is that, again, we've been here in this house 37 years with a system that has grown over time as technology changes. So we have a hybrid system. But we got into a situation about a year ago, and the San Ramon Police Department can back me up on this. AT&T was doing a lot of work and cable companies were doing a lot of work. And in any case, they damaged equipment down in a manhole over on Crow Canyon Road. And it was messing with our telephone lines. We had no way of knowing it. ADT didn't get triggered, but the police department was getting repeat 911 calls. I had no way of knowing that. ADT had no way of knowing that. The police were nice when they showed up, but the 3rd or 4th time it happened, and I happened to be retired AT&T and a field supervisor, I escalated as far up as I could in the company to finally get them out to do the repairs. But it went on for about 2 or 3 months. So there's a lot of other possibilities, technical possibilities, I don't think have really been well thought out in terms of this policy. Those are my comments for right now. Like I said, I'll write it up and send it in.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks for your feedback. Any, Madam Clerk, any other public comments?
At this time, there are no additional requests to speak.
Thank you. With that, we'll close the public comment. So Vice Chair Armstrong, please go ahead, provide your feedback.
Well, I think the policy needs to be, appropriately broad, but specific enough to get the job done. I read it that way. I think all the right components of the policy are there in terms of the purpose of it and what occurs when there's violations, confidentiality, the fact that there is a waiver process to take into consideration things that may not be the fault of the owner, et cetera. I think you've got it in here. I'm comfortable moving it forward to, I think I heard you say, Alicia, it needs to get before finance maybe for the fees, but I'm okay with moving it forward to the council. Maybe take into consideration some of the comments that we made today and see if there's not some clarity that can be added, but I have no additional comments other than that.
Thank you, Vice Chair Armstrong. So, yeah, from, ordinance or the governance, definitely we need on resources, especially when we are a critical resource like police department, right? Those are very critical and limited resources, and we need to use them very wisely. So I think having something like this is going to help us to make sure we allocate the right resources at the right required at the requirement. At the same time, what are the feedback which we received from Vice Chair Armstrong as well as from public comment? There are certain comments, especially the things like if the agency have some issues or the cabling issues or something happens, then we should be able to take those things into consideration before we penalize to the residents. Those are some certain things that we need to make sure we put into consideration and add that as part of this ordinance, I think. Because if the agency, for example, as one of the example is if they are doing the cabling work and if it is keep tripping false alarms and all that, then I'm sure we should have provide that benefit of doubt or benefit of not giving warnings or tickets to our residents. So those things we should make sure taken into consideration. But otherwise, I think we are good with this to move forward with presenting this to council and hear more from council, more feedback. And one important thing I always think of is educating the community. That I keep always stress about this on every item. So let's make sure we provide adequate education to the community, as well as whenever the first warning that they are receiving, if possible, I'm just thinking out loud, if possible, if we can ask them to sign a letter or something like that, where like acceptance that, okay, we received the warning, from going forward, these will be the penalties that we will be facing. So something like that, if we can ask them to sign up, that will be a good way. Otherwise, there is always to and fro will come back. To and fro can happen where residents can come back and say, hey, I didn't know about this, I don't know about these penalties and all that, right? So let's try to put some framework where we can get a warm handshake from the resident who will receive the first warning that going forward, this is going to happen. This is the penalties that can happen. And also they have an option to even submit request on if they need more information on that, something like that. So that's feedback from my side.
Thanks. Through the chair, may I make a couple comments or or I guess responses to.
Please.
Thank you. So, Vice Chair Armstrong, yes, this, in order to accomplish this, in the end game is you have to change the fee resolution so everyone's aware of the penalties. So that's on one track, and that needs to be done. But separately, I'm helping the police department on the ordinance part. So we won't be able to enforce the ordinance penalties until the fee resolution's updated. So, and vice versa, if they beat us to it and get the fee resolution updated, which I'm not sure they will be able to, but if they do, then we technically can't enforce an ordinance until the ordinance is in place. So it's two things happening on parallel tracks that have to be done in order for their this process to their alarm, the registration and so forth to take place. So they won't start doing that until all that's in place. And then I know there's, I think staff is still working through the details as far as education goes, but there is, there are different, we've added in a very robust appeals process. So I know I've talked with staff about, what if, there's some issue like, you got the wrong person, or I don't know, whatever it is, that there's a good reason why they should not be penalized. Staff has assured me that they, of course, will take that information and, make that determination, weigh the fee or whatever, but, people will need to respond and not ignore the violation notices, which many people do. But if they, come back with a reasonable, with proof, that, hey, this is not me, or it's not my property, or whatever, you made a mistake, that will be taken into account, and, they will not be penalized. And there's a robust appeal process. There's also a hardship waiver in here. If it does happen, but still, if there was actually an alarm that happened and they're on their second or third false alarm, but they've made efforts and made prove that they've made efforts to try to remedy the false alarms, and they're unable to pay for the penalties, we have added that in there too. So there are different avenues of hearing out, the residents if there's a mistake, or even if it isn't technically a mistake, but they're just unable to, for some reason, they can make those requests to the police department.
Okay. So I have one more question actually. So is it, are there any neighboring cities within our Tri-Valley or within Bay Area that they do this kind of ordinance?
Yes, I believe, the false alarm penalty schedule is exactly the same as town of Danville's.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And Jim and Brett may be able to comment, but I believe they work with a lot of different cities throughout the nation and locally as well.
Yeah, we do. So we do the ordinance for San Francisco, Pleasant Hill, Danville, Walnut Creek, El Cerrito, and we do all the way across the country: Greenville, South Carolina, Sarasota, Florida. But Brett, am I missing any in the Bay Area? I think, or Brett may have to go through something to get on here. But yeah, around here we've got 6, 7, 8 cities, and like Alicia said, we do Danville, and this ordinance pretty much is almost the exact same as Danville.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll just chime in just kind of on the broader numbers. I think if you just kind of go down and look at kind of the surrounding Northern California area, there's probably 60% of them have an alarm ordinance. The rigor with which they are enforced and attended to kind of varies. Fee schedules vary. But it's something that's done quite commonly in municipalities.
Okay. So when after the implementation, did they see any improvement, any changes?
Yes, absolutely. And the education is a big piece of that. But you're going to get more responsible, just alarm users, the fines, and get people's attention basically. And you're gonna, the habitual users, you start to get equipment fixed a little bit more quickly. The alarm companies also know and want to make sure that they're not having issues with their alarm. It's their customers, right? So they start to pitch in. So you just get overall a massive amount of awareness and education, and people just taking their you know, making sure everyone's trained, knows how to set it. All this sort of really low-hanging fruit gets solved for pretty quickly. So, and as Alicia said on the appeal side, we are, anything that anyone appeals goes right to, Claudette and her team and everything else. So we're not in here to be heavy-handed whatsoever. Danville would attest to that. We, manage the ordinance exactly to the spirit of how you guys would want everyone treated in the community. So we're not here to, bring the hammer down on anyone. That's not the way we do business. So.
Okay. So I'm kind of a numbers guy. I like to see numbers. Do we have any numbers on how many false alarms we received this year?
For COVID year, it went down. Prior to COVID, in 2018-19, over 3,000 false alarms.
That's a lot.
And typically you'll see 30-35% decrease in that number. So it's a pretty big number to start. And then once you get there, it's going to plateau. And then that obviously will offset because alarm ownership is increasing quite a bit with all the sort of easy to set up systems from Ring and Simply Safe. But you will see a pretty significant decrease.
Sounds good. So I definitely want to see how we can make alarm companies to be more responsible. I'm not saying that we should be lenient on our residents, but at the same time, we need to see how we can make these companies to be more proactive because the technology is changing, new technology is coming. Maybe they should start working on getting their upgrades on technologies and see also how they can reduce it. But in any case, so we need something like this. So for me, I'm good to proceed to present this to council. So do you need any other feedback, Alicia? Are you good with the feedback?
I think I am good with you. I will review to see if there's any improvements that can be or clarifications that can be made about the tenant issue and maybe the I guess if there's anything about penalties. But was there anything else in particular that you're looking for, including anything that's brought up in public comment that you need for me to revisit?
So definitely one thing is about if the agencies have issues like cabling company or PG&E, if they are doing some work or if that is causing tripping these false alarms, then we need to take that into consideration. We should not put the burden on the residents to start appealing for those things. So if we can figure out how we can get that, I know that still end of the day, it will become our police department get the burden of going there, then finding out, right? So we need to find out if there is a way we can get information about these repairs or something which in that area which can trip alarms or something, then that can help us, right? To whether we can go with these penalties or not, or be a little bit lenient on those penalties while that work is going on.
I'll have to check with staff. I don't know how often that happens where it trips like of alarms, but maybe staff can comment on that.
Yes, it does happen. Actually, we had a builder in Doherty Valley that had heavy equipment at one point, and it would hit the ground and sound off all the alarms over there. And once I'm notified of that information, and my officers will normally always give me feedback, then I take all of that into consideration, and I don't send them letters currently on the old ordinance either. They don't get letters or they don't get fines or warnings due to something that's beyond their control.
Excellent. So that's already covered. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that's pretty much from my side. Vice Chair, any final comment from you?
No final comments. Thank you.
Okay, if you're good, then let's go to the next item, number 4, new business. Item number 4.1, repeal and replace Chapter 1 of Division B6 of Municipal Code to address Senate Bill 1383 compliance and an update regarding city compliance with other aspects of SB 1383, presented by Public Works Program Manager Kerry Parker.
Thank you, Chair Verose. Good afternoon, Chair Verose, Vice Chair Armstrong, and city staff. My name is Kerry Parker, and Program Manager for the city's Solid Waste and Environmental Services programs. This item is to receive comments from the committee regarding a solid waste ordinance revision to tie up loose ends on a massive and multifaceted state legislative item that California jurisdictions like San Ramon are required to be ready for or ready to implement at the beginning of 2022. Senate Bill 1383, or SB 1383, is the short-lived Climate Pollutant Reduction Act passed in 2016. This is the most robust piece of waste reduction law created in the past 30 years. The pollutant targeted by this legislation is methane, a greenhouse gas 84 times more harmful to the environment than carbon dioxide, which is generated by the discard typically of food and yard waste, organics, in the landfill, which is a anaerobic setting rather than an aerobic setting as we compost those materials. Because methane is a short-lived climate pollutant, while that basically lasts as long as that organic item is decomposing, it largely emits well before a landfill can be capped and that gas can be used for beneficial purposes. So through these regulations, the state is targeting a 75% decrease in methane emissions below 2014 levels by 2025, and diverting 20% of surplus edible food that is currently being wasted to donate it to food rescue organizations where it can feed hungry people. And they mean to do that by 2025. Just a note here, the National Resources Defense Council reports that 40% of all food meant to hit a plate is wasted, and it's often deposited in landfills. So I'd like to show you, this is kind of a visual presentation, but I think you'll appreciate it. I want to show you a quick overview of why the state is having us jump through these hoops. Now let's see, I'm going to share my, host, please enable me to share my screen. Let's see, where is Joan?
I am opening you up now, Carrie. Bear with me 1 second.
Okay. I wonder if you can tell how many times I'm clicking on this thing.
I don't see where you're restricted. Let me try to pull it up. Just one moment.
Sure. It's usually something in the settings, allow participants to share. And the image I'm using is one that was in the brochure attached to the first San Ramon 1383 brochure that I attached to the staff report. Oh, looks like it's working. Hold on just one moment. Oh,
You should be all set, Carrie.
okay, this one is, are you going to do it, Joan?
No, we see your screen. I've already given you the ability to share screen.
This is not my screen.
So that page we can see actually from the receive if it is California.
Yeah, this is Joan's screen. Joan, are you going to? You're muted, Joan.
Joan, if you can stop sharing your screen, please.
Joan?
Just one moment. I'm having problems.
Okay.
I lost my video. Just one moment, please.
Oh, no.
Or is
And basically what I'm going to be telling you is essentially why the state is initiating why it was voted on in 2016, and also kind of the massive undertaking that this has been already for the city of San Ramon and for cities just like ours. And that addressing each of the items has mostly been done. And these revisions are just to kind of really tie up loose ends regarding making this an enforceable ordinance, but also just adding text where we needed to in the municipal code.
Sounds good.
I'm filling space.
Carrie, you should be able to share your screen over Jones. I've just allowed.
Can't get it open.
Oh, let's try it. I'm going to try it. Here we go. It looks similar.
Hers is.
Okay. You see that okay?
It's still coming, I think. Oh, now I can see, yes.
Got it.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, guys. All right. So pictured here on the screen is a graphic kind of depicting an ideal organics life cycle as imagined by the state's SB 1383 strategy, as opposed to the methane generating dead end outcome we currently have by depositing organics in the landfill. So follow me starting at about noon, and I think you can see my pointer, yeah, at the top of the screen and moving clockwise. So the good news, so at the top you see the carts, right? With the advent of ACI of San Ramon coming to San Ramon in 2019, but in 2018, as we made that agreement, we made sure that every customer in the city of San Ramon has all of these containers, right, in these colors, right? And we needed to make sure with that agreement that we had organics collection available for all of those customers. We needed to make sure that it was taken to a city-approved facility to be composted into usable soil amendment, and then added to healthy soils. And what you may not know is that when you add these sorts of nutrients to soils and the crops that are grown from them, that activity causes carbon to be drawn down from the air into the soil. This is a negative emissions. You may not have heard that much, but this is a negative emissions practice. It's a really helpful item. So in those crops that are using that soil amendment have higher yields and have a higher nutritional value, need less water, less pesticides, and are more resistant to things like drought, things like, to any sort of pests. Now, as I mentioned earlier, 40% of all food is wasted. Here we are at food production, right, from those crops. So this was something they're definitely focused on since they knew that 40% waste was happening before the food even hit a plate. But here we are consuming it, right, or collecting leaves, and we start that whole cycle over again. So here's where I want to show you how San Ramon has either already addressed or needs to address a couple more items before early part of 2022. Whoop. And hopefully this will work. Oh, that's right. So in 2018, as I mentioned, we got a compliant SB 1383 compliant franchise hauler, and we got compliant container colors. That green, blue, and gray is actually required by the state. And luckily we've already got that. And this is the most expensive part of 1383 compliance, and San Ramon is done. And part of the brilliance of that agreement is that there are SB 1383 items embodied in the agreement, making sure that we are compliant in many ways. This item, self-hauling. So this is one of the ordinance revision. We're basically silent on it currently, but here we are dictating it and mostly, or enforcing on it, I guess I should say. And the reason why is that we have to address self-haulers, and self-haulers are not like large haulers like ACI or Waste Management. We're talking instead about landscaping haulers, right? So we want these folks to haul to a facility that processes that compost for compost, processes organics for compost, and not sending it to the landfill. So that's an important part of this. But it's and in some ways we are meant to record how much of this material is flowing through San Ramon, but I find that to be difficult. We are going to be looking at software that is going to help us track that sort of tonnage. SB 1383 requires that we procure post-consumer organic products. This is in progress. We, through the agreement with ACI, we procure compost and mulch through that agreement. Plus, it requires that we procure post-consumer recycled copy paper and janitorial paper in city facilities. But that's in progress. So the next thing is to apply compost to city green spaces. This is in progress. We take that compost that we get through the ACI agreement, and we have already been applying it to city green spaces, largely our city arterials. And then apply compost to private green spaces. Now this is private property. So we have been, we had our first compost giveaway, which is included in the agreement with ACI. We had that first compost giveaway in September, where we gave away 1,000 cubic foot bags in 2.5 hours. We really didn't think it was going to go that fast, but the residents are ready for this. Here's another item outlined in red that is being tied up by the ordinance revision in front of you, and that is the food waste, reduce food waste and help to assist with edible food recovery. Now, this item is mostly to address and educate the tier 1 and tier 2 food waste generators that are in San Ramon. And these are tend to be commercial operations and agencies. But I want you to imagine that tier 1 food generators are supermarkets, grocery stores, large food distributors. Tier 2 generators are large restaurants, hospitals, hotels, and schools with on-site food facilities. And they kind of have to meet a certain criteria, but we are going to be educating and assisting those in making sure they have food rescue agencies tied up with them. And we're going to be monitoring their agreements and monitoring how much food is saved through this. I mean, this is kind of to get to that 20% level that the state would like to see. And as I have been doing with you today, we mean to educate consumers and businesses. We want everyone to kind of understand why we are doing this. We're not trying to, everyone has had green waste carts for quite a while now. We are now just really saying we're kind of serious about this. We need the organics to go in the organics bin. So at this very top level here, the final item is that we need to ensure proper sorting through enforcement. So it's essentially, we need the organics to go in the organics bin and the trash to go in the trash bin, and the two shall not meet. We need to have relatively clear streams that are not contaminated in order to have good soil amendment, and then in order to make sure that methane is not produced in the landfill any longer. So I think that that essentially wraps it up. So with this ordinance revision, San Ramon is ready for SB 1383 implementation to begin on January 1. Reducing the generation of methane in the landfill where it can be harmful to the environment, and instead applying the diverted organics processed as compost to green spaces where it can reduce the impacts of climate change is beneficial to our region's environment and to the people that enjoy this beautiful city. Additionally, beginning to develop and support a program that would feed people in Contra Costa County who are currently experiencing food insecurity is a program worth every effort. So thank you for attending my trash talk. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Kerry. Vice Chair Armstrong, any questions?
You know, I don't know that I have any questions. I mean, I've been doing this ever since I can kind of remember here, living in San Ramon. So even before ACI, putting food scraps into the little green buckets and dumping it and everything else. So it's not very difficult. I don't know that everybody's doing that. So as you mentioned, Carrie, I think outreach and education is going to be the key on this thing. People might have the buckets, but are they putting their scraps in it and that sort of thing on a consumer level, the personal level? I'm not quite sure I understand how the whole edible food recovery piece of it works. I mean, even these larger businesses and supermarkets and things like that, I don't know what food it is that they're going to provide that they can't use, but is still edible enough to recover and then transfer it to the excess to one of these other organizations. But again, education is going to be the key to those businesses, and then monitoring, make sure they are linked up with those recipient organizations that can use that food. You know, I'm glad to see in the draft ordinance there's a provision in there for waivers, because I think there's going to be a lot of smaller businesses and entities that this policy, this municipal code won't apply to. So I think the target is really on the major ones here. And frankly, I'll just say that it sounds like a lot of record keeping. I understand the intent behind it. I understand the potential benefits. I think our current contract with ACI puts us well on the way to being able to complete this. I think that outreach is going to be key. But boy, I don't envy you in terms of kind of that education piece and then tracking it and the compliance part of this. So yeah, no questions really at this point, but I may have some later on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Armstrong. So Kerry, you want to reply something, or?
I can reply a little bit to that. I'd have a piece of anecdotal information. I found out today that Sprouts, let's say, this is a good demonstration of this. Sprouts just signed an agreement with an organization called White Pony Express. So they are going to be coming down and collecting whatever food is available and taking it to refrigerators that are a bit north of us. I believe White Pony Express is located in Walnut Creek. So they are developing agreements with the various tier 1 generators already. These are grocery stores tend to have these in place already. We are just going to be tracking them now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, let's open for public comment. Public comment is now open. Madam Clerk, anyone from public comment? Or before that, let me read the verbiage for public comment. So to comment, please click the raise your hand button or *9 on your telephone to request to speak. When it is your turn, you will be unmuted to make your comment for up to 3 minutes. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Written comments submitted were provided to the committee prior to the start of this meeting and made as a part of the public record. Written public comment will no longer be read aloud during the meeting. Madam Clerk, anybody for public meeting? So public comment?
Request for public comment, calling user number 1.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. The public comment has been like screwy all night long. I tried to comment to the previous item. You guys said that there's no public comment, which wasn't true. And now I just got shut down like several times before I'm able to be unmuted. Can I speak to both items?
No, actually we opened that public comment and also we closed, but I think you can, okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Very quickly, for the alarm, as a resident, I want to support the police officers. I also don't want them to, get into unnecessary, risky situations because of false alarm. In Texas, there are people who are deliberately ambushing sheriffs and police officers. However, as a resident, I just want the attorney's office to please make sure you don't require the residents to disclose where the glass breakers, the sensor locations. It's not necessary, because then we become an open book, and then anybody can come and compromise, and it defeats the purpose of having an alarm. So please, the attorney's office, I will be holding you responsible for not requiring us to, have to disclose those locations. And I have checked with the chief, and the chief doesn't want those information. So if I see that coming in any, ordinance, I would hold the legal department, Mr. License Department accountable for acting like a communist government. Regarding the methane production, I'm sorry, I didn't hear any science in that presentation. I didn't hear, number one, what is the tonnage that is currently being inappropriately wasted, so to speak, which should have gone to the organic recycle bin. You don't know that data. Therefore, how can you gauge, even if people start spending a ton of money? And I think this is like a indirect tax or inflation even on the consumers, because when the supermarkets need to spend more money taking care of all those things per laws and ordinances, they will have to piggyback those expenses eventually on the consumers, which is, really ridiculous, because if you don't provide any scientific data, which you can engage, it's all based on political opinion. And this is a push for the Democrat agenda. I don't see how we can support you if there is no data. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment, Madam Clerk?
Chair Veros, we have no additional requests to speak at this time.
Thank you. Then we go ahead and close the public comment. Vice Chair Armstrong, please provide your feedback to the staff if you have any additional feedback on this item.
No, I provided my comments previously. I don't have any additional comments other than to say I think we're going to have to align our municipal code with SB 1383. That's the California law. We're at the point of compliance here at this point, whether we like this or not. And I think it's doable through a little effort. It's not too hard for most of our residents. It's pretty easy. In fact, like I said, I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm not sure it's really that difficult and that much beyond what some of these tier 1 users either are already doing with existing agreements, or I think there's certainly people that can use the food, and we have a lot of different food drives around the city with all the time, and we have a generous community that helps to contribute to our food banks and other things. So this will go one more step towards helping to solve some of that problem as well. So I think the municipal code appears to be good as written, and I don't have any additional comments or questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thanks, Kerry, for presenting and sharing the valuable information. Definitely, first thing I need to update my wife about the private getting compost. I don't know why I'm buying all the time, so definitely I need to update. This is a fantastic program. There's a multifold impact on this with this kind of program, right? First thing is we are not wasting the valuable resource, food. And then the second thing is we are making sure that the climate action is being taken, because when we preserve this food, obviously we won't end up producing more. So that means less resource usage. So that's another fold of aspect of help to the climate as well as for whole environment side. And then community getting fresh air because of this, that when we reduce the methane, obviously we're getting fresh air for the community. So this is very important, I think, very important step that we are taking towards the next level. So I have, you have all my support to proceed with this, to present this to the council.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we are going to the next item. It's number 6, or is it item number 6? Or item number 5. There is policy committee comments. Any comments, Vice Chair?
I've got nothing further to add. Thank you.
Nothing from my side also. With that, we are on item number 6, adjournment. Thank you everyone for joining the call. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.